segment 2, how she did it. Let's begin with Mrs. Thatcher's personal qualities. And There Is No Alternative. You write about doing research, and you come across in a museum, you come across one of her handbags.
It wasn't a museum, it was the Thatcher Archives.
The Thatcher Archives.
Yeah.
And so they've got a box, you open the box, and there's a handbag, one of her handbags, and you write that you were surprised that it carried the scent of perfume, not, quote, napalm and gunpowder. Why is that, Claire? Tell me about this, Mrs. Thatcher as a person.
Well, here's one thing. I have never met her personally. When I began work on this book, she was already too ill. When you hear stories of her refracted through other people, you always hear how astonishing she was in person. Now, we were just talking on Ricochet, we were talking about the quality of political charisma. I've seen this in her on television. I have never actually been in the same room with her. Have you?
I have, yes.
Okay, so you might be able to tell me, I ask everyone who met her, what was it like?
Let me put it this way. You sat up a little straighter, and you made sure your fingernails were clean.
This is
right, okay.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. You wrote the book. Go ahead.
You can see this in interviews with journalists who are otherwise completely incapable of being intimidated, like David Frost, who's not someone who's easily intimidated. I mean, you see in his interviews with her that he's terrified, and that she's just steamrolling over him. She had, from everything I can tell, and of course I'm putting my portrait of her together from many, many different sources. But
your sources, one of the things that's so enjoyable about the book is that you do long interviews. Of course, you don't provide transcripts, but you have clearly done long interviews with people who knew her well over long periods of time.
Yeah.
You're going to sources who knew her.
Yeah. People say when she walked into the room, it was like a great diva coming on stage, and that she knew it, and she was full of presence. She bustled in, that the energy level just immediately rose in the room. The temperature seemed to go up. And she had that kind of star quality, and that she was terrifyingly impatient if she thought you were stupid or incompetent, but capable of extraordinary kindness as well, especially at a personal level. Personally very tolerant of her ministers' foibles, unless they were stupid or irritating.
John Hoskins, once again, quoted in There Is No Alternative, "She's not your ordinary, world-weary, pompous, self-important, thinking inside the box, slightly defeatist, pragmatic, cautious Tory politician." So you've already described that she's not that, but what he's describing is the background of figures against whom she seems so singular, figures in her own party.
Yeah.
All right, now, personal qualities, but also principles. You quote a speech in There Is No Alternative that Mrs. Thatcher delivered 2 years before becoming Prime Minister. This is a longish quotation, but it says a lot. Quote, "We must not focus our attention exclusively on the material, because though important, it is not the main issue. The economic success of the Western world is a product of its moral philosophy and practice. The economic results are better because the moral philosophy is superior. It is superior because it starts with the individual."
You pulled that quote out, and so did I, because that, I think, is the single most important thing to understand about Thatcherism, that it is not just free market economics. It's a belief about the redeeming moral value of freedom, which she believed should apply to economic life as it should to every other aspect of human life. She made the moral case for economic freedom, I think, more powerfully than any politician before, or, apologies, since.
You're trying to goad me into defending Ronald Reagan, but
I don't think we both love Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
Okay, we both love Ronald
These two
Reagan.
these two are not on a reputational teeter-totter. It's not the case that when one is up, the other is down. They both rise together.
Go together. Okay. The difference between Thatcherism and free market economics is that when we talk about free market economics, we're talking about widgets and textbooks, and we're talking about optimal economic outcomes, and it's not just that. She is saying that man is an economic being who makes myriad economic choices over the course of his day, thousands and thousands of small economic choices. And to the degree that you take away his ability to choose, you are taking away his moral agency. You are taking away his free will, which is how we distinguish a moral being from this coffee cup. And it is really important to understand that this did come from a religious way of looking at mankind as someone who has fallen and makes choices between good and evil. And her view is a moral one, not just a technocratic one. And it is so deeply held.
She did not want to wrap her countrymen in more material goods. She wanted them to lead better lives.
Yeah.
That's what it came down to.
Yeah, she wanted them to be self-reliant, strong, productive, moral citizens. And she felt that socialism was absolutely incompatible with that.
Summary statement of how you place her. Let's get into it. Let me quote historian Jeffrey Elton, quote, "There are times when I incline to judge all historians by their opinion of Winston Churchill, whether they can see that he still remains, quite simply, a great man." Does Margaret Thatcher pose the same test?
To any historian who's looked carefully at her record, yeah, sure. If you can't look at Margaret Thatcher and conclude that she's a great woman, then yeah, there's something wrong with your historical acumen.
All right.